In the previous video, I gave a background about Application Performance Monitoring, or APM. I explained the problems that APM aims to solve and popular solutions used to solve those problems. In this episode, I want to do a step-by-step demonstration of how to set up APM using version 9 of the APM Agent, along with version 9 of Elasticsearch or version 9 of Logstash. Here is a more detailed table of contents for this video. I will leave time markers in the video description, and I will leave time markers in the YouTube player's scroll bar to help you navigate through these chapters. My goal is to create a NodeJS application, then set it up for APM. If you only care about using Logstash for your APM log server, then watch these sections. If you only care about using Elasticsearch and Kibana for your APM log server, then watch these sections. After this video, you can watch the next episode where I set up APM for a Python application and for a Golang application. And for our paid members, you can always watch these extra topics on APM with Elasticsearch. So let's get started with this tutorial. I will start by following this guide to set up APM for a NodeJS application that ships APM data to a text file using an APM agent and Logstash. In the second half of this video, I will have my NodeJS application ship APM data to an APM agent and Elasticsearch. So here we go. I have two Ubuntu servers out in the cloud somewhere. They both are using Ubuntu 24.04, and they both have 1 GB of memory. Let's use this one as our logging server, meaning all APM data will be shipped to this server. We will put Logstash on the server to receive the APM data from the APM agent that is on this server. This is the public IP address for this server, so we can use this IP address to access this server. And this is the public IP address for this server. So we're going to go ahead and just follow this guide over here. And given that they're both completely new Ubuntu servers, we're going to do the usual updates. This will update the Linux distribution with the appropriate repository definitions and any other necessary packages. And I'll also install vim, curl, zip, jq, newpg, gpg, just typical tools I often use. And we'll do it for both servers. Let me copy this. And I'll pause until this is done. When I'm asked about any of these prompts, I'll just accept the defaults. So it looks like both servers are up to date now. So at this point, let's start with the logging server. We're going to install Logstash to our logging server so that Logstash acts as the service that will ingest data from our APM agents. And I'm going to put the installation instructions into this bash script over here so that I can run everything all in one shot and also have a reusable script if I ever need it again. Now, the installation instructions are pretty straightforward. It comes straight from the Logstash website, or you can even watch our tutorial on Logstash if you want to know more about what all this stuff does. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and run this. I'll pause until everything is done. All right, Logstash should be installed now. You can confirm this with this directory over here. So let's move on to the next step. In the next step, we're going to create a configuration file called apm.conf and put it into the conf.d directory. So you can see that there is a conf.d directory right now, but it's empty. And what this configuration file will do is it's going to have a block of code called the input block, and we're going to read from the Elastic Agent plugin. It's going to listen on port 5044. You can see all the different types of input plugins available to Logstash on this web page here. And Elastic Agent is just one of them. Let's look at the details of the Elastic Agent input plugin. If I scroll down a little bit, you can see a lot of parameters over here. you can use these parameters inside your Elastic Agent block over here. One of the more important things to do would be to use TLS certificates to encrypt the traffic between Logstash and the APM agent. This will help defend against man-in-the-middle attacks. I will demonstrate TLS setup in this paid members video. This paid members video will demonstrate end-to-end integration between the APM agent, Logstash, and Mongo. But for now, let's just keep this demonstration simple. I only need to tell Logstash to listen for APM agent's data on port 5044. We won't worry about security at this point in time. Next, I have this output stage here, and it is using the file output plugin. So if you go to Logstash website, again, there's a lot of different output plugins you can choose from, and we are using the file output plugin. You can see there are a lot of different options that you can put into here. Again, we will keep things simple with this one parameter over here, which tells Logstash to dump all the log outputs to a text file called apm.txt inside the var log logstash directory. And for our paid members, you can also watch our APM agent to Logstash to Mongo integration if you want an example of outputting APM data to Mongo. Okay, so let's go ahead and create our apm.conf file first. I'll paste this command here. And now if I do an ls, you can see that there's an apm.conf. And let's take a look just to make sure it did get written there. Yep, it's all here. So let's go ahead and enable Logstash. And then let's go ahead and start up the Logstash service. And if I do a systemctl status Logstash, it could take a minute or so to warm up and get everything running. So you can see right now it's still starting up. Okay, I'm going to pause for a moment, and once it's actually started up, I'll show you what a success startup looks like. All right, I think things are now up. And if I press the right arrow key, here it is. So this is a message that you should be looking for to denote that the Logstash server is up and running. It's currently listening on port 40 or port 5044. So that is good. Coming back over here. So next, we should start thinking about our application server. We're going to need to put an application on it and an APM agent to read APM data from the application and send it over to Logstash. So let me copy these instructions. And not this server. We're going over to our application server, this one over here. I'll minimize this one. And let's put a bash script here, paste it in here so that I can edit things. Okay, so this line here will download the APM binary agent. It'll unzip it. And then we will create a YAML configuration file in this newly created directory. This YAML file is going to set up our APM server or the APM agent that's going to be listening for APM data and sending it over to Logstash. We're going to listen on port 8200 of this server by setting the IP address to 0000000, like just a whole bunch of zeros. We're making it a wildcard, meaning you can access this server from its public IP address or from localhost or from 127.0.0.1 or any other IP addresses that this server can be accessed on. Okay, so this is pretty permissive. We should probably lock things down a little bit more. I'll demonstrate this in a members video on how to improve security for the APM agent. We're going to put a secret token here, ABCD1234, so that any applications, our Node.js application, Python application, Go, PHP applications, whatever application you've instrumented, it must know this password to be able to access this APM agent. Next, we're going to send things over to our Logstash server that we just set up, and we're going to need to put in the IP address of our Logstash server. So this is where all our APM data will go. And I already forgot what the IP address of the server is. Okay, so it's this one. I'll paste in here. Okay, we're not going to use TLS certificates, meaning all traffic is not going to be encrypted. It's going to be in plain text and quite visible to anyone. This would be a very big security concern, but in our members video, I'll show how to secure this communication. Let's set the logging level to air. What this does is when you start up the APM agent itself will have some logs related to its own operations. The logs can have notices, warnings, errors, and many other things. If we don't specify the logging level, the agent might output everything, which a lot of isn't really that useful, and it could just end up taking up more disk space. By setting the logging level to air, we will ignore anything that's not critical. Okay, so that's what this is for. Once we create this YAML configuration file, we'll go ahead and change the permission on everything in here to the root user, and I think that should be it for now. Let's go ahead and install. Okay, looks like here's our APM server executable. And if we look at this APM server.yaml file, it's got everything we need. Great, so let's see what the next step is. Next is we can start up our APM agent with just this command here, or you can add in this -e flag to see any status updates, logs, or errors associated with running this agent. So let's go ahead and run this command. .apm server, and let's start things up. And I think it's probably going. Okay, we're getting an error about Elasticsearch, but that's okay. We're not connecting to Elasticsearch. We're just connecting to Logstash. And if I take a look on our Logstash server, if we look in the logs directory, Logstash, okay, nothing shows up yet. We don't have the apm.txt file, but that's probably because there's no data being shipped to our agent, and our agent is not shipping anything to Logstash yet. So I think we're ready to move on. I'm going to open up a new terminal window that goes straight to the same server. So give me a moment. So here's a new terminal window on my computer. I'm going to paste this IP address of this server over here, and let's log in. Great. Okay, so what we need to do is we need some software applications to test with. And what we'll do is go up over here and go to our GitHub. And I'm going to download the code, copy, and let's go back over here. And let's go into the apps directory, git init, git remote add origin. Let's paste this in here. Git pull origin master. Okay, so now we have some apps to work with. Let's start with the NodeJS app over here. And inside this folder, I've got a few JavaScript Node.js applications we can test with. Let's start with basic.js. This is basically the same code as what we have in our PowerPoint presentation from a few minutes earlier. And anything else to say about it? No, not really. Now, I don't have Node.js installed on the server yet. If you want to install Node.js, I've got the instructions here. It's basically this. I'm just going to put it maybe node. I'll just paste in here and run this all in one shot. So we'll give it a moment. All right, I think Node is installed now. So let's go over here, go to app, go to our Node.js app in here. And if I do node basic.js, let me restart my bash or start a new instance of bash. Maybe some of my environment variables haven't been set yet. Now let's try this. Huh? Node basic.js. Okay, I'm still getting an error. Let me try npm install. All right, I'm not sure what's going on, so give me a moment to figure this out. I'm going to pause for a bit. I'm on Stack Overflow, and this question here, or the answer to this question, suggests maybe I forgot GCC. So maybe I'll do that. apt-get install -y gcc, and I'll pause until this is done. And now if I do npm install, okay, now it looks like things might be working. Okay, and now if I do node basic.js, this might be good. In fact, I forgot what the IP address of the server is. Give me a moment. Okay, so I just figured out the IP address of this server, and I typed into my web browser 172.105.24.78.30.30, and we're seeing hello world, which is a good sign. And if I type example 1, good, that's what we expect. The exception for a non-declared variable. Example 2, good, and it just prints a message. So let me go back to my terminal window, and I'm going to press Ctrl-C to terminate the process and open up basic.js again. And as we know, the code here has not been instrumented yet. I do have the instrumented version of this file in basic-instrumented.js. Sorry, this might be a bit hard to see, so let me just open up one file only. I'm going to clear the screen and open up basic-instrumented.js. So what you're seeing here is an instrumented version of the code that we ran before. The first difference you're going to notice is this block of code here, which initializes a connection between the Node.js code here and the APM agent that we have installed on this server. You'll notice that we are using some environment variables, and that's because I do have an environment file here, and in this file I have all my connection details to the APM agent. In fact, I need to update this URL to localhost, and then I'll save, and let's get back to the index. It's the basic-instrumented.js. Okay, so all this code here is just connecting to our APM agent. And just by initializing this Elastic APM node plugin, this will automatically ship a lot of data to the APM agent. Data like general exceptions, HTTP requests, and server metrics, and resource usage data, and other telemetry data. The other difference is I started a span here, and what this will do is basically measure the time it takes to execute the code between start span and span.end. And that's pretty much it. So let's try out this piece of code as well. Okay, I think it should be good. So let's go over here for a moment. We have hello world. Okay, it's looking like it's up and running. Since everything is up and running, and since our code has been instrumented, then our Node.js app should have sent this error to our APM agent. And our APM agent should have sent this over to our Logstash server. And our Logstash server should have dumped this event to our apm.txt text file. So let me copy this message and try to look for it in the apm.txt file on our Logstash server. So this is our Logstash server here. And if I do here, I do see an apm.txt file here. And if I look in here and I look for the phrase non-declared here, you can see that the error was caught and placed into this file. The other thing I can do is if I press Ctrl-Z, The other thing we should look for is this start span to span.end, which measures the time it takes to execute the fetch. And the name of the span is measure fetch. So let's actually look for this in the apm.txt file as well. So let's node basic instrumented. Okay. What I'll do is I will go to example 2. I'm going to go back to my Logstash server, and APM.txt has changed. Okay, so let's say L, and now let's say measure, and you can see that measure fetch is in our APM logs now. The other thing I'll mention is that reviewing log files like this can be a bit overwhelming. So what I did at the beginning of this experiment was I actually installed the JQ command as part of the update. And what that means is now I can run the cat apm.txt command and pipe it over to the JQ command. And now when I press enter, the log files are going to be in a more human readable, friendly JSON format. And that's pretty much all there is to using Logstash as your APM log server. At this point, I want to demonstrate how to use Elasticsearch as your APM log server instead of Logstash. And then we can use the data visualization tools of Kibana to more easily review your APM logs. I'm going to pause for a while to get everything set up, so I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, so I'm back now. These two windows here are still logged into my server with the APM agent and the NodeJS application. In fact, I can stop the server. I can stop the APM agent here. And over here is a new server. It is, let me just check, Ubuntu 24.04. It has 8 gigabytes of memory and it has this IP address to reference it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to install Elasticsearch and Kibana onto this server and use this as a server to receive the APM logs. And we'll have Elasticsearch and Kibana be the tool to let us review all the APM data that sits on this server. We're going to follow this guide here. And first thing we're going to do is set up Elasticsearch. We do have a more in-depth tutorial on how to set up Elasticsearch and Kibana. We even have a video on that. So if you need more details, you can just follow this guide over here. But this one will just be a faster way of doing things. Well, actually, I need to correct this here. Give me a moment. Okay, there we go. I just updated to say that it's 8 gigabytes of memory. All right, so first thing we should do is install Elasticsearch. Instead of going through the whole video that we have, over here, I already have a simple script that you can use. And we'll just copy this, go over here. Oh, actually, I do need this IP address. So let me just copy this. And then I'm going to copy this. Oops. Copy. Paste it in here. Just go all the way up and update this with the IP address that I pasted. And let's go ahead and change the permission on the script and then run it. So I'll pause. Okay, looks like install.sh has completed. Yep, everything looks like it's okay so far. So what I need to do is systemctl status just to check if Elasticsearch is up and running. It looks like it is. And the other thing I can do is systemctl status Kibana. Okay, that's a good sign. It means we can visit a web browser at port 5601 and enter this code to continue. So let's go ahead and do that. Although I keep forgetting my IP address, which is this one. Copy. I'm going to go to my web browser, paste in the IP address, port 5601, and the code is equal to this code here. Oh, it has to be HTTPS accept go. So we're going to need the enrollment token, which we can grab back on this server over here, the Elasticsearch server, and we'll run the command usr share Elasticsearch bin Elasticsearch hyphen create enrollment token hyphen s Kibana. And this might take a moment, so we'll wait a little bit. Okay, and now what we do is we grab this token and we'll paste it back into our browser window over here. And it'll take about 30 seconds to a minute for Kibana to complete its integration with Elasticsearch. So in the meantime, we should actually reset the password for the Elastic super user that we need to log into this platform with. So let's go back to our Elasticsearch server, and we can run the command usr share Elasticsearch bin Elasticsearch hyphen reset password hyphen I hyphen U elastic. And in a moment, we'll be prompted for a password. Okay, there we go. I'll press yes. ABCD1234, ABCD1234. Just trying to keep the password simple and easy to remember. And coming back here, we can finally log in as Elastic ABCD1234. Okay, it looks like things are working. I'll explore on my own. And great, so now we have both Kibana and Elasticsearch up and running. So let's go back to our documentation. I've already completed all these steps over here. So what we need to do now is update our APM agent. Now we already have our APM agent up and running, so we just need to make some updates to it so that it uses Elasticsearch as the APM log server instead of Logstash. In terms of the updates we need to make, there are two of them. The first is we need to grab a copy of the CA certificate from Elasticsearch and give it over to the APM agent. And the second thing we need to do is we need to update the configuration file of our APM agent so that it points to Elasticsearch instead of Logstash. So let's start with the CA certificate first. I'm going to go back to my terminal windows for the APM agent server. So that's this one here and this one over here. And we're going to put a copy of the CA certificate on the server. So I'm going to go over to the etc directory, make a new directory called certs, and we'll put the certificate in the http_ca.crt file. So let's go back to our Elasticsearch server, and the Elasticsearch CA certificate is in the etc Elasticsearch certs directory inside the file called http_ca.crt. So let's copy this entire certificate, go to our APM agent server, and paste it into this new file that we made. And that's pretty much it. We now have a copy of the CA certificate from Elasticsearch, and we've put it on the APM agent server. So let's go back to our documentation, and we've just completed the step with the CA certificate. So now we've already installed the agent. We already configured the input. Now we just need to change the output to point to Elasticsearch in our configuration file. So let's just copy this segment and let's go back to our APM agent server and let's go over to the directory that has our APM agent. So that's this one here. And let's make a backup of our APM server.yaml so that in case we need to use our Logstash connection again. And now let's edit our APM server.yaml. And we just replace this Logstash area with output to Elasticsearch. First thing we need to do is update the IP address to point to our Elasticsearch server. So I'm going to go over to my browser, copy this IP address and paste it into over here. And yes, we're going to use HTTPS, username Elastic, and the password is the password that we logged in with. We are enabling TLS and verification mode full, and we'll point to the CA certificate that we saved earlier. And then we just go ahead and run the command, but it looks like there's an error. Oh, I know why. I probably didn't shut down the agent properly last time. So let me do PSAUXF. I'm going to grep for APM server, kill -9, grab this process ID, paste it in here, and this will kill that service. And now we do APM server -E to start up the agent again. And this time this agent should be pointing to Elasticsearch. So now let's go to our other terminal window for this same APM agent where our NodeJS application is installed. And let's go ahead and start up our node basic-instrumented.js again. So let's go over to our NodeJS application, and I'm going to press refresh on this page here, which will recreate the non-declared variable error. And I think the APM agent should now have sent the details over to our Elastic agent. So let's go over to Elasticsearch and click on Observability Applications. And you're going to see here that Elasticsearch recognizes our Node.js instrumented application. And you can see that our error appears right here. Now I do see this other error here, but you can ignore it because this is actually something I was testing behind the scenes. It won't show up for you. So next thing we're going to do is let's go to our Node.js application again and go to example 2. And this will trigger the span and the fetch again. So we're basically measuring the time it takes to implement the fetch call. And what I'll do is go back to Elasticsearch. I am going to scroll up. I'll hit refresh. And looks like it hasn't showed up yet. It could take a few seconds to a minute, so I'm going to pause until it shows up. Okay, you can see example 2 has shown up here. And here you can see that the span for measure fetch and our fetch calls are being recorded right here. So I want to do one more change. I'm going to go to my basic-instrumented.js. And I just want to change this piece of text here from measure fetch to just something else. Let's say change this message. I'll save it and let's restart this application. And let me go to my browser again, hit refresh on example 2, hit refresh over here, and then I'll press example 2. And if we look at the span, great, the span's text has changed to change this message. So that's a basic example of APM with Node.js and Elasticsearch. Now, for practical purposes, there are a few examples of instrumentation that I think you should be aware of. So I put all these examples in a file called index.js. In most of my projects, majority of times, it's just these few instrumentation techniques that I use. So let's go through them. First thing I want to point out is, again, around starting up the Elastic APM Node module. This module has support for popular Node.js frameworks, with Express.js being one of those support frameworks. This is why when you fire any of these HTTP endpoints, the Elastic APM Node module will automatically notify your APM agent of the event and send over a transaction. If you're using a framework that the Elastic APM Node is not familiar with, then you may need to write your own integration directly against the REST endpoints of the APM agent. And writing your own integration with the APM agent REST endpoints is beyond the scope of this tutorial. So scrolling down a bit, the first endpoint we'll test is error automatic, and it'll just generate the non-declared variable error, no different from our initial basic instrumented.js. So nothing new here. The next endpoint is the error slash manual slash, and then anything afterwards. In this endpoint, I will explicitly send an error to the APM agent. This is different from the previous error with the non-declared variable. The non-declared variable exception is an example of an uncaught exception because a developer was not anticipating an error, but the Elastic APM node module is still smart enough to recognize the exception and tell the APM agent about it. A lot of times, however, developers do anticipate errors. In this case, a developer can capture the error and send their own custom error messages to the APM agent with the apm.captureError method. The next endpoint is the /span/ anything afterwards. And this endpoint is similar to our span test from basic instrumented, except this time, instead of measuring the time it takes to execute a fetch, we're just measuring the time it takes to execute the set timeout. So what I'm going to do is print testing span to the web browser, timeout of 5 seconds. This is our message, and we'll run the set timeout for 5 seconds. The next endpoint I want to demonstrate is the transaction-name / anything afterwards. And what I want to demonstrate with this one is that if I go to Elasticsearch, you'll see that the transactions by default are named with the HTTP method followed by the URL that you fired. And what I want to demonstrate is how to change this. And all you have to do is, let me go back to the code. Really, it is just this apm.setTransactionName followed by a string, and that string will be whatever you want the transaction name to be. The next endpoint is the metadata endpoint. And I wrote my own function here called sendMetadata, which takes a string, because in this sendMetadata function, I want to demonstrate 3 different types of metadata that you can choose to associate with your transaction and send along to Elasticsearch. The first type of metadata is the label metadata. You can send a label with the setLabel method. A label is a key value pair, and in this case, the key is my label, and the value is whatever's in this MSG variable. A label is indexed by Elasticsearch. When something is indexed, it means that you can write Kibana queries, Lucene queries, or database queries to find transactions based on index fields. So in this example, it means you can later find a transaction where my label equals to some string. The next type of metadata that you can choose to send is the user context metadata. The user context metadata takes an object that can have any combination of these 3 properties: ID, username, or email. The idea is that you can associate some user information with a transaction. The user context is also indexed. So later, you can run a query like find me all transaction where a user's email ends with @gmail.com as an example. And finally, the last type of metadata you can send is the custom context metadata. With the custom context metadata, you can send any kind of object. The custom context metadata is not indexed, so it will be difficult to write any queries to find transactions based on custom context. All right, let's just start this up and try it out. And looking at our script, I think the first thing we'll test is the automatic exception detection with the non-declared variable. So just like our basic -instrumented.js. So I'll change this URL to error automatic. The exception has occurred, and let's see if it appears in Elasticsearch. So I'll press refresh again. Oh, okay, there it is. There's our exception. So we know that that works. All right, so let's move on. The next thing we should try out is the sending our own custom errors. So I will type in /error manual, and I'll type my favorite error. Okay, and this message, my favorite error, should show up in Elasticsearch somewhere. Let me press refresh. Okay, not yet. Let's try again. Okay, there it is. Our favorite error is in here. So let's see, the next one is, let's test our span. It'll be just like the basic-instrumented.js, except this time we're testing a timeout instead of the fetch. Okay, so my favorite span, and I'll press refresh here. Okay, I'm waiting for the transaction to first appear here. Refresh again. Oh, there it is. Span : params. And in here, yes, I can see my custom testing a span message. And let's see what else. Right, I can see the message here as well. So this looks good. So let's try the next experiment now. It would be, let's try to change the transaction name. And what I'm going to do is go to transaction-name and just type my favorite TX name. And in here, I'm expecting a new transaction that uses a different naming convention. Something that says path : and whatever it is that I typed. Refresh again. And let's try again. Refresh. Okay, there it is. Path, transaction name. So we just changed the transaction name. All right, so the next thing we can try is the metadata. So let's send along some of our own metadata to associate with a transaction. So I'm going to change this to metadata and then /. Yeah, we can type anything afterwards. So I will type my metadata. And now if I go back to the code for a moment, I have this send metadata function here, and I'm just passing in the argument my metadata into these metadata objects as the message argument. So it should populate all these metadata values. And if I go to Elasticsearch, okay, I can see the transaction right here. If I scroll down and I click on this trace here, I should see the details of my metadata. Here's my label for my metadata. And let's see if we can find the user context, which is, okay, right over here. User.email, user.id, everything is my metadata. So that's good. And where's the custom context object? Let's see. Maybe I'll just Control F and look for it. Okay, here it is. So you can see that my object was flattened, but you can also see my metadata right here. So another thing we should check is that I mentioned that labels and user context are indexed, so we should be able to find transactions based on labels and user context. So let's find all transactions where labels.myLabel is equal to my metadata. Hit update. Great, it found the transaction. Let's also find based on user.name is equal to my metadata. Hit update. Great, it still appears. How about find transactions where user.email is equal to my metadata at mymetadata.com. Update. Yep, it's still there. I'll double check by clicking on this transaction and looking at the details. See if the email really is my metadata at mymetadata.com, and it is. So that's an example of how you can use index metadata to search for transactions. So at this point, I want to turn your attention to the official documentation, which is for the API reference of the Elastic APM Node module that we were using. And up until now, I've shown you all the most popular or most useful instrumentation code for my projects, but maybe you might need a few more things. And to do that, you should really look at this documentation here. So what you can do is click on Ingestion Tools, APM Agents, then select APM Node.js Agent API Reference. Now there's a lot of other API reference for all these other agents, like the APM.NET agent, APM Go agent, APM Java agent, and so on. I'll speak to these other ones afterwards, but for everything we've demonstrated so far, it was with Node.js, so we have to be in the APM Node.js agent and look at the API reference for that. And we did use the agent API, so if I open this up, there's a lot more functions in here for you to use beyond the ones that I've already shown. So I'll let you explore some of these. If I scroll down a bit more, yep, you can see that we use the set user context and set custom context. And we did use the set label. And yeah, there's quite a few other ones, but you'd be able to explore these on your own. So that's it for this video. In the next video, I'll show some APM instrumented code for Python and Golang, and I'll demonstrate a few things with Docker as well. Again, I have extra topics around APM in the paid members area if you want to check them out. So thanks again, and I will see you in the next video.